Chapter 8. The Fire Chief's Daughter. George, it's Billy. Listen, I really need you to do me that favor. Huh? Who the fuck is this? The phone call had slapped me from a sound sleep, and it took a few seconds to clear the cobwebs and realize who I was talking to. Billy was on the line again, that crazy kid who had been tossed in the can for beating up his even crazier girlfriend. He was calling from the jail in Temecula for a third time, and each plea was growing more desperate than the last. You gotta help me, man. I don't know what else to do. Neither do I said. Already told you, there's nothing. You can't tell that bitch to drop the charges. He jumped in. She'll listen to you. Billy, George, if Jenna testifies against me, I'm fucked. I am totally fucked. Please, there is no one else. You gotta talk to her, George, please. This was one more aggravation I didn't need, but the kid was facing serious jail time for assault and battery, and he was freaking out. I knew Billy wouldn't quit calling until I did as he asked. I rubbed my eyes and sighed. Where is she? I drove out to the place where Billy figured his old lady might be shacking up, a house belonging to one of her longtime tweaker pals. Jenna was supposedly trying to get clean ahead of a drug test with Child Protective Services. If she failed, there was a strong possibility she would permanently lose the child she and Billy had made together. My knock went unanswered, but the door was unlocked, so I let myself in. The place was a shithole. I moved through the living room into the kitchen, where I found the counters littered with rotting food and fat flies. I headed into the hall and then turned into the first bedroom, and that's where I found Jenna. The girl was on the downside of a high, laying half naked on the bed and curled on her side. She seemed to recognize me standing in the doorway, but barely moved. What are you doing here? She mumbled. Billy asked me to check on you. Fuck Billy, she said, closing her eyes. Fuck that asshole. I walked to the edge of the bed and noticed the rubber tubing and an empty syringe on the nightstand. Jenna always had a sweet tooth for heroin. Then she took it a step further when a girlfriend got hold of her diabetic aunt's syringes. At peak, Jenna was shooting up 4 hours like clockwork. Lately, she'd taken to injecting that shit into her neck's main cable. That way, it went straight to the dome. Are you just gonna lay there feeling sorry for yourself? I said to her. Maybe, she murmured. The hell you are. Take a shower and get dressed. You're coming with me. I took her by the arm and hauled her to a sitting position. She looked at me thoughtfully a moment, then down at her bare feet. I don't have shoes. Where are they? I told you, I don't have any. I walked around the bedroom, checking the floor for shoes, then headed into the hall, telling her, I'll find some shoes. You take a shower. I think it might have been one of the few times Jenna ever listened to me. She cleaned herself up and threw on some clothes while I scrounged a pair of shoes from her friend's closet, which were too big but walkable. Then we piled into my truck and headed for the OK Corral, a bar Jenna had been sneaking into since she was 15. We pulled up stools at the bar and I ordered her a zombie, the strongest drink I could think of. With all she had been going through, I figured the girl could use it. Jenna was originally from Big Bear, a mountain community in the San Bernardino National Forest, but she and her little sister didn't stay rooted for long. Her folks had a messy split when the girls were young. Then her mother got heavily into drinking. By age 13, Jenna was following in her mom's footsteps, sneaking Gentleman Jack from the cupboard and smoking marijuana behind her school. 1 year later, tired of life with mother and an abusive stepfather, Jenna called her old man, who was then Hemet's fire chief, and begged him to come rescue her. He did as his daughter asked and eventually gained custody. It's a sad irony that the chief was also one of Hemet's drug and alcohol counselors at the time, the man other parents would send their kids to for help. But not even he could control his wild child. Despite all his training and best efforts, the man lost his own daughter to heroin. Of course, Jenna wasn't born in at it, but once she got a taste of that lifestyle, she jumped into it like a teenager, cannonballing into a swimming pool. By the age of 16, the girl was slumming in flop houses, slamming heroin, smoking meth, and fucking a different partner every other night. One of those partners was Billy, and once that tweaker and Jenna hooked up, it was like putting a lit match to gasoline. Ever the romantics, the couple began spending nights together making crank for resale. Law enforcement eventually caught wind, and their little enterprise But there would be no happily ever after for these two young lovers. They moved into a 20-foot trailer off a dirt road in the Golden Valley, where Billy began beating her on a nearly daily basis, the physical violence escalating until the day he crushed her nose. Jenna checked in at the emergency room to have her nose repaired. After throwing a tantrum, cursing at doctors, and slapping the walls, Jenna returned to the trailer to plan for her abortion. Seemed like the thing to do. After all, junkies are a self-serving breed, and babies only get in the way of that me-first lifestyle. Jenna wasn't in the best of health at the time either. After 3 years of slamming heroin and taking every other drug imaginable, she was justifiably afraid her kid would pop out looking like something from a carnival freak show. Because Arizona frowned on abortion, she and Billy scraped together all the cash they had and headed for Nevada. Only funny thing, the idiots detoured into a casino and gambled away all their abortion money. Now it was back to Arizona, where Jenna resumed the high life. So high, in fact, that before she knew it, 6 months had passed, and now, by law, it was too late to abort. Meanwhile, Billy started injecting speed, and that sent Daddy into a whole nother level of violence. He and Jenna were driving the backwoods in his Impala, arguing as usual, when Billy pulled a gun and tried shooting his girlfriend's foot off. The bullet missed its target, went through the floorboard, and shot out the tire instead. Billy regained control of the car, but lost control of himself. After pulling the Impala off the road, he dragged Jenna into the street by her hair and beat the shit out of her. When he was finished, he shoved her back into the car and drove on 3 tires, going 100 miles per hour back to the trailer, where, out of his mind, he kicked Jenna until she fell unconscious. As Jenna's due date approached, her mom drove out to Arizona and took her daughter back to California. A few weeks later, Jenna delivered a daughter, 1 month premature. Miracle of miracles, the kid wasn't born with the craving for heroin in a bottle. Now a young mother, Jenna tried to do the right thing and clean up her life. She started by going back to school while her mother watched the baby. The girl might have been a drug addict, but she was a damn smart one. Although she spent most of her high school years high on dope, she still graduated 1 year early. Despite her best intentions, however, the old craving soon returned, and Jenna tumbled back into drugs. To survive, she turned to welfare and sold dirt weed to find